Hi, my name is Robert, and I've been married to my wife Linda for over 15 years. We had what you could call a picture-perfect life, or at least that's what I thought. You see, for a long time, I never had a reason to doubt her. But let me tell you, there comes a moment in every relationship when something shifts, something small at first that makes you stop and think, is everything really as it seems? It all started one afternoon about a month ago. I was on my way home from work, nothing unusual, just driving down the street. But as I passed by the little cafe we often go to, I spotted Linda through the window. She was sitting at a table with a man I didn't recognize. They were talking, laughing, too easily, too comfortably. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he was a colleague or a friend she hadn't mentioned. But there was something about their body language that struck me. The way they leaned in close to each other, the way her hand rested on the table, just inches away from his. It wasn't just friendly. I don't know why, but I felt a knot twist in my stomach. I tried to brush it off, tell myself it was nothing. Maybe I was just reading too much into it. After all, Linda had always been friendly, outgoing, the type of person who made friends wherever she went. But something about the way she looked at him, I couldn't shake the feeling. The next few days didn't make it any easier. Linda started staying later at the office more often, saying there was some urgent project she had to wrap up. It was a little unusual, but hey, work can get busy sometimes, right? Then she started going out with her friends more often, saying she needed to recharge. But when I asked her what they did, the details were always a little vague. And it wasn't just that. She'd always been meticulous about her appearance, but lately she seemed more concerned than usual. She started spending longer in front of the mirror, trying on different outfits, talking about how she wanted to look better for work. She'd tell me it was for a presentation or a meeting, but I couldn't help but wonder, was there more to it than that? I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to believe her, to convince myself that it was all in my head. But another part of me, well, let's just say that gut feeling wasn't something I could ignore. The more time passed, the harder it became to ignore my growing unease. It wasn't just the late nights or the unexplained absences. It was the small things, the little details that didn't quite add up. Like the way Linda's phone would buzz constantly, and she'd always look at it quickly, then slip it into her bag when I walked into the room. She wasn't always like that. If she got a message, she'd usually just glance at it, maybe even show me the text if it was funny or interesting. But now there was this distance. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe I was just being paranoid. After all, Linda was always busy with work, and she'd been under a lot of stress lately. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One evening, about 2 weeks ago, I was on my way home from the store. It was late, around 8:30, and I was looking forward to a quiet night in. But when I got to the driveway, I noticed something strange. Linda's car wasn't there. She wasn't supposed to be out. There were no plans, no mention of any last-minute meetings or social events. I called her cell. It went straight to voicemail. I thought about calling her work, but that felt wrong, like I'd be overstepping. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I drove over to that cafe. Maybe I was just looking for some kind of sign, hoping I'd find nothing, that this was all just my mind playing tricks on me. When I got there, I parked across the street, my heart racing a little. I couldn't believe I was doing this, but I watched, waited. 10 minutes passed, then 15. And there, sitting at that same table, was Linda. Only this time, she wasn't alone. Mike, the personal trainer she'd been telling me about for months, was sitting with her. And once again, they were laughing. But this time, it wasn't just the way they looked at each other. It was the way she touched his arm, the way he leaned in, his face inches from hers. There was no mistaking it. They were more than just friends, and I had no idea how long this had been going on. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to march over there, demand an explanation, but I couldn't. I was frozen watching them. I wanted to confront her, but the other part of me was still holding on to that shred of doubt, that hope that maybe I was just imagining things. The next morning, Linda came home as if nothing had happened. She was cheerful, making small talk, asking me about my day, acting like everything was normal. But I could see it, the difference, the shift. It was there in her eyes, the way she wouldn't meet my gaze for too long, like she was hiding something. I didn't say anything, not yet, but deep down I knew. I knew I couldn't keep ignoring the signs. Something had to give. The morning after seeing Linda with Mike at the cafe, I tried to act normal. I kept telling myself it was nothing, that I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The knot in my stomach had tightened, and the unease gnawed at me like a slow burning fire. Then came the moment that shattered any remaining doubt. It was a Wednesday evening, and I was sitting at the kitchen table flipping through some bills. Linda was in the living room, half watching TV while scrolling through her phone. As I glanced up, she left her phone unattended on the counter, its screen lit up. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but tonight, something made me pause. I don't know why I looked, but I did, and what I saw made my heart stop. A message popped up from a contact named Mike, the personal trainer. The message read, "I can't wait to see you again. Last time was amazing." I felt like the room had spun around me. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the message, my mind racing. The words echoed in my head. Last time was amazing. What the hell did that mean? I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that I was overreacting. But my hands were shaking as I picked up the phone. Every part of me screamed to ignore it, to walk away, to pretend it was just a harmless message. But I couldn't. The gut feeling I'd been pushing away for weeks was now undeniable. I had to see more. I opened the thread, and what I found sent a cold wave of panic through me. The messages between them weren't just casual, they were intimate. "You were incredible today. Can't wait for tomorrow," another one said. And then, "I think about you all the time. I can't wait to be alone with you again." My stomach churned, and the world around me seemed to blur. My mind couldn't catch up. I was flooded with emotions. Disbelief, betrayal, anger. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me, and everything I thought I knew about my marriage had been ripped away in an instant. I didn't know what to do with this information. What was I supposed to do now? I couldn't just ignore this. As the reality of what I'd uncovered sank in, I felt like I was drowning in it. Linda had been lying to me. She had been hiding this affair right under my nose, and I hadn't seen it. The pain was unbearable. How long had this been going on? How many times had she been with him? I couldn't just confront her. Not yet. I needed to know everything. I had to find out the full truth before I did anything. But how? How could I get the answers without showing my hand? I paced back and forth, my thoughts racing. My mind kept spiraling between anger and confusion, and somewhere beneath it all, a simmering resolve began to take shape. I couldn't let this go, not without a fight. I wasn't going to sit back and let her get away with this, but first, I needed someone to talk to. I needed perspective. I couldn't do this alone. I thought about calling my old friend, Mike. He was the kind of guy who had always been there for me. He was practical, level-headed, and he'd always given me solid advice when things got tough. Maybe he could help me figure out what to do next. I dialed his number, my fingers trembling slightly as I pressed the buttons. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "Hey, Rob, what's up?" Mike's voice was calm, casual, but I could hear the concern underneath. He must have sensed something was wrong. I need to talk to you," I said, my voice low. I wasn't sure where to start, but I knew I couldn't carry this weight on my own anymore. I felt the pressure in my chest ease slightly just by hearing his voice. Maybe this was the first step in figuring out what to do next. After everything that had happened, I couldn't keep carrying this burden alone. I had to talk to someone. I needed a sounding board, someone who could help me process all these emotions, someone I could trust. I thought about calling Mike, my old friend, but I wasn't sure if he was the right person for this. Instead, I dialed the number of my brother, Paul. We hadn't been as close lately as we used to be, but I knew he'd understand what I was going through. It felt strange calling him, but as soon as he picked up, I knew I'd made the right choice. "Hey, Rob, what's going on?" Paul asked, his voice warm but cautious. He could tell something was off. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice tight. "It's about Linda." I could feel the tension building in my chest as I hesitated. I didn't even know where to start, but Paul, being Paul, just waited, letting me find my words. "I don't know. I've been noticing some things. Some strange things," I said, unsure how to make sense of it all. Her phone has been off limits lately. She's been staying late at work. Different habits. And then I saw something last night, a message on her phone. From Mike, her personal trainer. Paul didn't say anything at first. He was quiet, processing what I'd said. I could tell he was trying to gauge if I was just overreacting, but I could also feel his concern. Finally, he spoke. "Wait, what kind of message?" he asked. Something personal," I said, swallowing hard. "It wasn't just a friendly message. They've been texting each other like they're more than just trainer and client." Paul sighed deeply. Okay, Rob, I know this must be tearing you apart, but you need to understand something. You're not crazy. From what you're telling me, something is definitely off." That was the first moment I felt like someone else understood. For weeks I'd been carrying this alone, questioning my own sanity, my own judgment. But hearing Paul say those words, that I wasn't crazy, it gave me a little bit of relief. It didn't fix everything, but it was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. "I just don't know what to do," I confessed. "I can't ignore this. I know it's wrong to just confront her without knowing the whole truth. But I don't want to be in the dark anymore." Paul paused, thinking for a moment before speaking again. "Listen, Rob, if she's hiding something from you, you need to know. But you need to have proof. You can't just go off suspicion. You need to be sure. If you want to confront her, you need all the facts on your side. And if she's cheating, well, that's something you can't just let slide." I could feel the resolve building inside me. Paul was right. I couldn't just wait around and hope it would go away. I had to take action. I had to know the truth, even if it meant facing something I wasn't ready for. "I know," I said, running a hand through my hair. "I know I need proof. I don't know where to start." Paul gave a small laugh, but it wasn't mocking. "Well, you're in luck, because I've read up on this kind of thing before. People have gone through worse, and they've gotten answers. You can get them too. There are ways to track things without raising suspicion." I felt my pulse quicken. "What do you mean?" Paul was quiet for a moment. "Well, first things first, you start small, watch her, see if her stories line up. You can start by checking her routine, see if she's really where she says she is. And if you can get your hands on her phone, check the messages. You'll know if she's hiding something." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "And if she's really cheating, then you do what you need to do," Paul said firmly. "But you need to be sure before you make any moves. Don't let her turn this on you." We talked for another hour, discussing possible ways to gather evidence. I listened carefully to Paul's advice, but I couldn't shake the unease that gripped me. I wasn't ready for the storm that was coming, but I knew I had to prepare for it. By the time I left his house, I felt a strange mix of determination and dread. I had a plan now, or at least the beginnings of one. The next few days would be crucial, but no matter how much I hated the idea, I knew I had to start watching Linda. I couldn't let this go any longer. I had to know the truth. After everything I'd been through, I couldn't keep sitting on my hands. I had to act, but this time I knew it had to be done with precision. No rushing, no room for mistakes. Every move had to be calculated. I couldn't afford to mess up. Not now. Not when I was this close to the truth. I spent the next few days buried in research. I needed to find a way to gather evidence, something I could use to confront Linda without a doubt. I scoured forums and articles, reading how others had handled similar situations. The stories I found were a mix of cautionary tales and success stories, and each one made me feel both terrified and determined. One post in particular caught my attention. A user described using a GPS tracker to follow their partner's movements. It was small, nearly invisible, and could be discreetly placed under the car. That seemed like the perfect solution. Subtle, effective, and not too risky. I didn't waste any more time. I knew what I had to do. There was no need to keep second-guessing myself or calling anyone for reassurance. This was my decision to make, and I had to do it myself. The GPS tracker was simple enough to order online. It was compact, efficient, and would do exactly what I needed. I wasn't going to make the mistake of jumping into anything too drastic, like hidden cameras on, at least not yet. But this was something I could control without setting off alarms. I placed the order and waited for the delivery. In the meantime, I watched Linda closely, trying not to draw attention to myself. I was looking for the right moment, the right opportunity. Finally, it came. Linda had been out all day, running errands and meeting friends. She was in a good mood when she came home, humming to herself as she dropped her bag by the door. I didn't say anything, just gave her a casual nod, my mind racing with plans. I knew she'd probably go out again later, as she often did in the evenings. I wasn't sure where she was going or who she'd be with, but that didn't matter. I'd already decided tonight I would act. As I watched her move around the house, preparing dinner and chatting about nothing in particular, I felt the tension building inside me. Every normal action she took felt like it was in slow motion. I was counting down the minutes, watching for the right moment when she'd be distracted enough for me to slip away unnoticed. She disappeared into the kitchen, her back turned. This was it. I grabbed the tiny GPS tracker, my hand steady despite the storm brewing inside me, and I slipped outside to her car. I knew exactly where to place it, under the driver's seat, out of sight, but in perfect position. No one would notice it there. I stepped back into the house, heart pounding, and wiped my hands on my jeans. It wasn't much, but it was the first step. I had the answers I needed, or at least a way to get them. Now, I just had to wait. The next few days were agonizing. I checked my phone every chance I got, watching for notifications. There was no immediate confirmation, no big revelation, just a sense of waiting, of watching for the first signs of something concrete. But I didn't give up. I knew I couldn't. I had to stay patient, stay focused. The truth was out there. I just needed to be sure. I was sitting at home, nervously glancing at my phone screen. I had been tracking her movements using the GPS tracker I installed a few days ago. So far, nothing unusual was happening. She was following her usual routine: work, grocery store, gym. But today was different. I noticed that her car was heading in a different direction. She usually arrived home around 6 p.m., but today her route diverged from the usual one. At first, I thought maybe she was meeting a friend or had a late appointment, but when I checked the maps, I realized her car was heading towards a motel. That was unexpected, and in that moment, I knew I couldn't sit and wait any longer. I grabbed the keys to my car and drove off. Fear and rage were boiling inside me, but I thought I knew this was the only chance I had to uncover the truth. As I drove towards the motel, my mind raced, trying to understand what was happening. I couldn't believe she had gone this far. This was just the first step. When I arrived at the motel, I immediately saw her car. In addition, there was another car nearby, a black one, covered with dirt stains on the sides. I knew it. It was his car. Mike. The personal trainer, the one she was clearly more than just friends with. My stomach tightened, but I couldn't stop. This was my turn. I parked near the entrance and walked towards the reception. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to stay calm. As I approached the desk, I didn't try to hide my anger, but I wasn't rude either. I simply spoke to the receptionist like it was an ordinary question. "Hi, I'm looking for a couple, room 32. Are they here?" I asked, using a tone that gave nothing away. He looked at me with some suspicion, but still answered, noticing something in my expression. "Yes, they're in room 12. They're regulars here. Are you familiar with them?" he asked, not fully understanding the situation. I didn't explain further, just nodded and walked towards the room. When I reached the door, I knew this was the moment. I slammed my fist against the door. It echoed, a loud bang that made everyone inside jump. At that moment, I took my phone out of my pocket, with the hidden camera already running. I didn't want them to get away with this. Every reaction, every moment needed to be captured. I held the camera in my hand and recorded, feeling adrenaline surging through me. The door creaked open slowly, and there he was. Mike. I recognized him immediately, and his shocked expression only made me more certain of what I was about to do. He, not expecting me, froze in confusion. But I could tell he was starting to realize this wasn't just a random visit. His life was about to turn upside down. Then I heard her voice from inside. It was Linda, my wife. She looked horrified, her eyes wide open when she saw me. She tried to say something, but I didn't give her a chance. "So this is how you work, huh?" I said, pointing at Mike without hiding my fury. You're supposed to be at home, and here you are, meeting with him?" My voice was shaking with rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Mike tried to say something, but I cut him off. "Shut up, you! I don't want to hear your excuses," I yelled. He stood there, unsure of what to say. I could see the realization in his eyes. This wasn't just an awkward situation. His life was crashing down. I turned to Linda. Her face was pale, and she nervously played with her hair. I couldn't understand what was going on in her mind. "So you really think you can hide this from me?" I continued, feeling my rage grow. She tried to justify herself, to say something, but I didn't want to listen. I took a step forward, and her face turned even paler. I knew it was over for her. Everything she had built was crumbling right in front of her. She could no longer hide behind excuses. I took a step back and raised the camera, showing them the recording. "So this is your work, huh? This is going to be your life now. If you think you can hide this," I said, showing them that the entire scene was recorded, and they wouldn't be able to get away from it. I sat in silence, holding my phone, the screen showing everything that had been recorded. I had just shown Linda and Mike that I knew the truth. They were in shock, their faces expressing confusion and despair. But I couldn't stop now. This was just the beginning. Now that I had the evidence, I began to realize exactly how I needed to act. Their lives, their careers, everything they held so tightly. I knew how to destroy it all. But for that, I had to carefully plan every step. The first thing I did was sit down at home and start writing everything I needed to do. In my notebook, I started jotting down my ideas and goals. I couldn't let them get off easy. They needed to pay on every front, in their careers, in their social circles, and in their reputations. Mike, the personal trainer who had been so confident in his invincibility, had one vulnerable spot: his job. I knew his reputation in the fitness community wasn't as flawless as he would like people to think. He always boasted about his special methods and unique connections. But behind all of that was dishonesty. I knew he was avoiding taxes, and his business reputation was hanging by a thread. I could easily send a few random questions to the right people, and it would all come crashing down. As for Linda, her perfect image, the beautiful stories she told about how wonderful and honest she was, would quickly crumble if I exposed the truth about her in front of her friends and colleagues. I knew she had a few friends she wasn't on the best terms with. I could plant some rumors and let them spread, eroding her world from the inside. I thought about all of this as I sat at my desk. I knew I had to be cautious. Every part of my revenge game had to be precise. I created a fake social media account to start spreading the right information. My plan was simple: leave no traces, but strike at the heart of their lives. I knew that every move had to be calculated. I would start by sending the photos of Mike to his colleagues. He had no idea, but they needed to see what was really going on. Knowledge changes perception. And Linda, I would break her down through her friends, whispering the truth and spreading rumors until she lost everything she held dear. Every step of this plan required precision, care. I cleared my browsing history, erased traces of every action, and used a VPN to keep my steps hidden. And everything had to be flawless with no sign of who was behind it. The game would start tomorrow. All I had to do now was watch their world begin to crumble. When I started acting, I knew nothing would be the same. Every step was carefully planned, and I couldn't stop now. I decided to begin with Mike, the one who had ruined my life. I knew his reputation in the office was hanging by a thread. I knew that if I played my cards right, everything would come crashing down. I didn't waste any time and sent an anonymous tip to the tax authorities. A few days later, I saw his office shut down. His accounts were frozen, and his business was ruined. Everything he had built collapsed in an instant. But that was just the first step. I knew I had to go after Linda, too. I reached out to her friends and acquaintances, placing the right seeds of doubt. I sent anonymous messages, slowly breaking her relationships with the people she trusted. The rumors spread quickly. She tried to keep up appearances, but soon her world crumbled. Her friends started turning away, her colleagues began avoiding her, and at work she was called into the office and fired. That was the end of her career. I couldn't stop. I knew her life needed to be destroyed. I started posting her conversations, sending photos to her office and to people she knew. I gave her no chance to make excuses. Everything was exposed to the public. Linda was no longer the person she had once been. As for Mike, his life was completely shattered. His wife filed for divorce and took the kids. His world became empty. He lost everything: his career, his respect, his reputation. Everyone who had once admired his success now saw only the betrayer. When I looked at everything I had done, I felt neither satisfaction nor joy. I didn't feel happiness from destroying their lives, but I knew justice had been served. Everything I had gone through was not in vain. I knew I had done the right thing. I was ready to move on. Revenge didn't matter anymore. I sat in silence, reflecting on everything that had happened. It didn't bring me peace, but I felt a sense of control again. I realized that revenge had cost me a lot of time and energy, but it was necessary. It was what helped me find myself again. I closed my eyes, letting go of the weight. Now I was ready to start a new chapter in my life.